Welcome to Adventures in Life. I'm your host, Earl Beecher. Our guest is a unique individual. I met him because I was driving in the car one day listening to KLON as usual, and Jerry O was doing an interview with our guest, who is William J. Coffey Jr. And Dr. Coffey is a medical doctor and MS, Master of Science in pharmacology.
I should tell folks pharmacology. When you say pharmacology, most folks think pharmacy. They're not the same.
What's the difference?
A pharmacist is one who prepares and dispenses drugs. A pharmacologist is one who creates the drugs, who deals with the actions and interactions, their primary effects, secondary effects, etc.
Now, Dr. Coffey is the medical director of the AIL Dermatology and Medical Clinic, which is located on Santa Rosalia Drive in Los Angeles, which is the shopping center you mentioned.
Yes, it's on the south side of the Crenshaw Shopping Center, which, when I came to California, I thought they said that was the oldest or the largest shopping center in the country, but nevertheless, it's quite large now. It's been rehabbed and updated. But anyway, we're on the south side of that. There, many people have heard of the Magic Johnson theaters. His theaters are in that shopping center, and we're on the south side of that.
Now, Dr. Coffey, what is a medical doctor, dermatologist doing on KLON talking about jazz?
Well, 14 years ago, I and some other folks, we created a jazz association, International Association of Jazz Appreciation. And so we're 14 years old, and we were, at that instance when Jerry interviewed us, we were doing a local production. He was there, did the interview. And actually it was doing our Frontiers of Jazz Music Awards, which is an annual event. And one of our honorees was Eddie Harris. And so I did the interview.
And so they had you come into KLON and did the interview about it. I can appreciate it when I ask you a question like, what's a dermatologist know about jazz? Because I was always agitating on the campus at Long Beach to get a jazz institute started. And I'd go over to the music department and they'd say, what does a finance professor know about jazz or about music? And people tend to want to pigeonhole you.
Absolutely.
And it's not right.
That's absolutely true. And what does actually not what do you know, or what business do you have being involved in music or jazz music, and what do you know about jazz music? And then on the other side of the ledger, my physician friends want to know, what do I know about music? Why am I doing that? Why don't I spend more time in medicine? So you hear it from both sides.
Do you do surgery, cosmetic surgery?
I do less than I used to. I had I used to do quite a bit, but now I don't do much surgery because of my fingers. Sometimes they don't do what I want them to do. But but you don't have to do a lot of surgery anymore as long as you have capable people who are doing it and you overseeing it, and that's how it works these days.
I want to spend most of our time talking about jazz. You said that the International Association of Jazz Appreciation has a Frontiers of Jazz Music Awards annually.
Right.
And that took place this 1996 in what month?
In April.
In April. And you were awarding Eddie Harris?
Eddie Harris, and also Jimmy Clark.
Can you give me a definition of jazz?
No.
Thank you very much. That was quick. I got the same kind of reaction out of Chuck Niles and out of Ken Porgers and some of the people down there at KLON. They say it's very broad. It takes in a lot of things.
It does, and it's very difficult to define. And I think that a lot of people try, and I have tried on occasions, but it's hard to define what it is.
I like jazz the best when it swings. I tend to go back to the swing era, the big band era, and that to me is the type of jazz that I liked. But since then, we've gone more to combos and not to the bigger orchestras.
That's true, but one of the spokespersons for jazz these days, Wynton Marsalis, says, you know, if it's jazz, it has to swing, period. So
It don't mean a thing.
yeah, someone else said that some time ago.
Yeah, Duke Ellington.
Right, right.
Okay. Now, you became interested in it, in promoting jazz 14 years ago. Were you active in music when you were in school?
I became a listener. You see, I was born and raised in the great sovereign state of Iowa. The playing
Half the
state.
people from Long Beach were born and raised in the
That's true.
great state of Iowa.
And they will tell you that there was no jazz music there. There was a lot of country western there. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate enough to be able to reach a radio station that came out of New York that I'm sure you know about, Symphony Sid from New York.
Oh, yeah, Leaping with Symphony.
That's right. Yeah. And so I got introduced to jazz via his radio station. And also there was a radio station from Gallatin, Tennessee that played, it was Randy's Record Shop. And they played mostly rhythm and blues, but they threw in a little jazz. So that's how I first started listening in those days when I was growing up. Then when I went away to college, to undergrad school, had the fortune to meet a very interesting person. This was a man who was over 6 feet tall, weighed over 200 pounds, was an All-American guard on the football team in Iowa, and he was a fine arts major. And he was a jazz enthusiast. And I first started listening to jazz music with him, getting introduced a little bit more, because I didn't have any records when I was growing up at home. But he had quite a few, and so that was my real introduction from those three things.
Did you have a favorite band?
I did. In those days, I did not like small groups. And believe it or not, the band I liked was Stan Kenton. I just loved.
Oh, well, you're on home base there.
I just loved Kenton's arrangements.
Yes.
And that's all I really paid a lot of attention to. Also, while I went to the State University of Iowa in Iowa City.
Yes.
There was a nice place to be because the university was an open university. The student association was active. And I'm saying all that to say is that part of the program, so we're going back in the early 50s, so part of the program was to have jazz music almost every month during the school year. For example, jazz at the Philharmonic, first place I saw them was on Iowa's campus.
Yes.
Brought there by the student union. In fact, Oscar Peterson was playing the piano.
Oh, yes.
But also during that time, I saw such people as Louis Armstrong was in, Roy Crawl and Jackie Kane. So they all came through on Iowa's campus. So you were able to see and to hear the real musicians, as well as I said, my friend who introduced me to the recordings and the radio. So that's how I got involved. So I liked the music, and I never lost that.
Now, are you promoting things in schools?
Yes.
Through your jazz association, you're doing something with schools. And they're telling me it's time for a public service announcement, so I want to come back to that just as soon as we come back from the announcement. So
Very
please stay
good.
with us. We'll be right back. Our guest is Dr. William Coffey Jr., the medical director of the AIL Dermatology and Medical Clinic, who happens to also be the founder and president of the International Association of Jazz Appreciation. And we were just talking about some of the activities of the association. And Dr. Coffey, would you tell us what you're doing for the school children today?
Yes, we, some years ago, well, to be exact, 8 years ago now, we started a program called Jazz Goes to School. Prior to that time, we, like many other individuals and organizations, we were asking ourselves the question, how can we best preserve and perpetuate this art form called jazz music? And after kicking it around for a while, we decided that for us, the best way would be to create a program that could be presented in the public school systems. that would be actually a history of jazz music, so to speak. And I say public schools, we do not exclude private and public schools, private and parochial schools.
Sure.
But because we are a nonprofit, we're a 501c3 organization, we're nonprofit, we belong to the public, so public schools was kind of a natural for us to try to do this. We have what we think is, in fact, what we know is a unique program in the United States. It's unique in as much as we go to the schools that are selected once a week for 7 consecutive weeks.
Are these mostly inner city schools?
They are in all of the 14 school districts for LA Unified School District. They're in all 14 of those districts.
Yes.
And 2 in Inglewood, 16 schools the most. The first year, 8 years ago, we went to 4, and those 4 were all in one district in the inner city. That's where we decided to start. The 7 weeks, each one of those weeks, they have a music plan, a lesson plan for the music for each of those weeks. And the first week always is a rhythm, so we start with Africa and rhythms the first week, and then by the 7th week we're up to present-day jazz. The program is kindergarten through high school. So what we did is we divided K through 12 up into 4 groups, kindergarten through 4th, 5th through 7th, junior high and high. Each one of those groups has their own separate lesson plan because the older they get, the more advanced they get, the more that we can do with them. And the program, Earl, is more than going to the auditorium for 50 minutes and listening to some music. What we try to do is to broaden the fund of knowledge for the kids in many other areas. For example, even in the first group, first lesson, rhythms, Africa. Even though they're kindergartens, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders, our lesson plan asks the teachers to have the kids go to the map or to the globe and find Africa on the globe or the map. Okay. So we begin to deal with geography and history. We deal with mathematics, sociology, socioeconomics as we go along up through the 12th grade. So we intertwine all that into learning about jazz and blues music. The kids are not even aware that they're learning things.
They're just having a good time,
having a good time, and they're learning things that they need to know in a kind of a relaxed, fun atmosphere. So that's what makes our program different than most other programs where the jazz artist or group will go and do a seminar, which is fine because we need that, or a concert because we need those. But we have what we think is a very good educational program.
My viewers here on the Adventures in Life series have heard me letting off steam about the fact that the schools have cut so many of the cultural things out of the curriculum because of the budget cuts and so forth, music, art, you know.
Right.
And I've always contended that music teaches you math. By the time you've counted the number of beats to the measure and a half note, eighth note, quarter note, etc.
Absolutely.
You have to learn your math, and you learn your intervals like thirds, fourths, fifths. There's math involved all through it.
Absolutely.
And so that when you're getting the children involved in this, you're taking not just concerts, but learning experiences into the classroom for the students?
That's what we call it. It's an arts education program.
Okay.
It's a learning experience.
And some of it concerts, like listening to records, are live performances?
They're all live performances.
All live?
All live performances. We hire the musicians, and the groups vary in size. From the smallest group we use is a quartet, and the largest group that we have is an octet, depending on what they're trying to do. If they're dealing with the New Orleans scene, and that is one size, and so on and so forth.
You tell the kids the difference between New Orleans and Chicago and Kansas City jazz?
The
East Coast and West Coast jazz?
The entertainers do. I mean,
I bet they do.
The teachers do, because part of what we do is we insist that preferably the leader of the group, whether it's whatever size group, or at least someone in that group, has had experience in teaching. That's one of the prerequisites.
So they're able to speak and reach out and explain what's going on.
Right. It's an interactive program that we have. During the course of the 50 minutes, they will ask the students questions, and they invite the students to ask questions. And then the little ones, you know, the kindergartners and the first graders, they want to know what is that over there, the big bass, for example.
Oh, yes.
Bass. What is it? How does it make?
Probably never seen one before.
Absolutely. How does it make music, or how does the trombone work? So they spend a lot of time teaching them that about the instruments. But as they grow older and as they get more advanced, you know, the questions get a little more complicated.
More
but they
sophisticated.
That's right. And they are, they're told the differences between different kinds of music. One of the more interesting things that we do, you know, like I said, I grew up in the Midwest, a lot of country western. And I like it. You know, I play it. I have records at home, and one of the buttons in my car is tuned into the country western station. But I also like what I call European classical music, so one of my buttons is punched into there. When you put it all together, there's a little bit of all of that in jazz music. So one of the things that we do during the course of our education program, especially with the little ones, we'll ask them to name a nursery rhyme. So they'll name a nursery rhyme, and then the group will play it in a traditional way, and then they'll play it in a jazz vein, and then they'll play it in a blues vein for the little ones. When they get older, one of the things that they do is they will take a well-known European classical tune, play it in that vein, and then they'll play it in a jazz vein. And one of the enlightening things by the time we get up to the high school set is to show, demonstrate how many of the tunes that Duke Ellington did were actually rearrangements of a European classical tune.
Name one.
Don't ask me. I am not a musician.
Okay.
The only thing I can play are the CDs, the tapes, and the etc.
You play those very well.
Right. Last week I could have, because I was talking to someone about the very fact that how Duke Ellington had taken classical music, European classical music, and rearranged it and made jazz music. But I can't recall one for you at this moment.
I've worked with jazz musicians. We're using Paul Smith's recordings for the theme on this show, and he likes to take humoresque and he puts it into jazz medium quite often. And one of the recordings he did one time was the Rachmaninoff Symphony No. 2, not the concerto, the symphony, and turned it into a jazz melody that's just gorgeous.
Sure.
So that once you've got a piece of music, you can do it in several different arrangements. And especially with jazz, you're given this freedom. They tell me it's time to pause for another public service announcement, but so stay with us. We'll be right back.
Because disaster strikes someone every single day, there's always going to be one more night someone needs food, shelter, and a place to rest. Please support the American Red Cross. Because without your help, one more night could be hard to come by.
¡Órale, míralo! Las gangas nos han robado las calles. Las drogas tienen infectada a nuestra comunidad. Nuestros niños son las principales víctimas. Pero no podemos perder nuestra esperanza. La Coalición de Prevención del Crimen te enviará información de cómo puedes empezar. Ellos tienen ejemplos de prevención que están comprobados y te pueden ayudar. Para unirte a la lucha contra el crimen, llama al 1-800-727-únete. 1-800-727-únete. Únete a la lucha contra el crimen.
Our guest is William Coffey, who is the founder and president of the International Association of Jazz Appreciation. Who are some of the people that work with, that maybe some names that we would recognize, William?
One of the original board of directors members and an old friend of mine is Ramsey Lewis.
Ramsey Lewis, okay, I'm sure our viewers will know that name.
And one of the most popular jazz disc jockeys in this town is Chuck Niles, and he's one of the original founders along with me.
Yeah, he was at KKGO for a long time and then went down to KLON.
Right, and he's still a member. He's a founder and still a member.
Chuck's a good man. He's in the mainstream. He knows what's going on.
Oh yeah, yes indeed. And one of the first concerts that we did, Buddy Collette led the band. And the band was truly, oh yeah. So he's been involved and knows about IOJA, and I'm sure many of the listeners know Buddy Collette. Nat Adderley is a friend of mine, and his brother Ken is the one I really was close to. And so at our Frontiers of Jazz Music Awards last year, we awarded our award to Cannonball, and Nat came out and we brought him out in his group, and they performed as well as accepted the gift, the award for his brother.
Wonderful.
And every Sunday we do a jazz thing. I don't know whether we can talk about that here or not, but we have a jazz set every Sunday from 5 until 9 at a local establishment, and if they want to drop by there, they can. So that's another way to get in touch with IOJA.
Okay, sounds like exciting.
So we do that. So we do a variety of things. Our Jazz Goes to School is our real deal. We would like to be in all public schools in all 50 states by turn of the century, and we think if that happens, you know, people in the music business world don't think jazz music can generate much interest, but one of the reasons is because no one has developed an audience, and they use the radio and television to develop the rock, the pop, the rap, and the rest of that, and they don't give jazz a play. But if we could have introduced the students to it, kindergarten through high school, let them make their choices, I guarantee you that at least 1% of every graduating class in all 50 states would like and appreciate jazz music. Then there would be jobs for those who want to play and write it. There would be jobs for those who want to produce it and record it, etc. And then there would be places for us to go to hear it. It would be a whole other ball game. And I think it's a very simple thing just to introduce. And we're not saying to the children, you know, you must like this. We're just exposing them to it and let them make some choices. Now they don't have a choice. Jazz is the one thing they can't decide not to like. It's because it's not there.
They have to be exposed to know what it is.
There it is.
Yes. I grew up with the big band era, of course, and you don't hear the names of Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman and Artie Shaw and Harry James as often anymore. Tommy Dorsey, Stan Kenton. But you do hear their music every once in a while, and they're beginning to replay some of those tunes now with the jazz idiom with a smaller group. And I think it's very exciting that you are doing what you are doing, the International Association of Jazz Appreciation. And you are establishing branches in other countries?
Yeah, well, we do have members in other countries. We have not launched a membership drive on an international level, but we intend to do that.
But it's coming.
Yeah, we intend to do that.
Thank you so much for being our guest. This has been William Coffey, who is an MD, the medical director of the ACLA Dermatology and Medical Clinic, who is a jazz enthusiast. And William, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you.
The privilege was mine. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and please join us soon again for more adventures in life.